All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello,
Hold on.
everyone. Oh, you're supposed to introduce me. All right.
Yeah.
I was told by the tech folks that I just go ahead and start. So I just went right in. I'm sorry, Gina. Please introduce me.
So welcome everyone to the Marlene Mayerson JCC's Manhattan 18th annual Shavuot Tikkun. And this is our second ever virtual Tikkun. So we're very grateful to have you here tonight to celebrate this holiday together in this way. My name is Gina, and I'm going to be the event host for this session and a few others after this one tonight. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that you are muted. If you have a question, please put it in the chat, and I'll filter them out to our speaker or answer your questions if you have one that I can answer, or send you to AV if you have a problem as well. You can reach our AV person through, it says Marlene Mayerson JCC, so you can send a direct message to that name if you need any help with any tech problem. So our session will conclude at 10:15, and it'll give you a chance to stretch before you go on to your next session. So I'm very excited to introduce to you our presenter, Jen Slosberg. Jen Slosberg is a Jewish nonprofit professional working at Jewish Youth for Community Action, JYCA, and formerly served as the executive director of Mix at Berkeley. She received her BA in political science from UC Berkeley. Jen was born in southern China and moved to the United States as a teenager. She hopes to increase the visibility of Asian American Jews through Lunar. So let's thank her for being here with us this evening. Jen, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and let's get started.
Yes, thank you, Gina, for the generous introduction. As Gina said, I'm just going to expand on my introduction a little bit. My name is Jen. My Chinese name is Xia Ye. I was not going to have Gina pronounce that on the spot, but it's important to this particular session. This is the diversity of Asian American Jews. That's the name of my session, as part of the Behola Shown Jewish Diversity Track at this event today. I am the producer and co-creator of Lunar, the Jewish Asian film project, which you may or may not have heard of. This is a short form video series and online community by and for Asian American Jews. So we launched in February 2021 with a 6-part season 1 video series covering topics such as fusion of food, cultural values, the intersections of racism and anti-Semitism, and what Passover and liberation means to all of us as Asian American Jews. The format of the videos was we interviewed 23 Asian American Jews in groups of 5, and they each spoke very candidly about their experiences and conversation for 2 hours, and we cut those down to 10 to 15 minute segment videos. So today's session, I am going to be speaking a little bit about our moment, Shavuot, and the themes of revelation and visibility and what that means for me as an Asian American Jew. And then I'm going to go into showing you 2 clips from the Lunar video series. And then after each clip, I'll take about 5 minutes to have you all ask questions about what was in the videos, what was the creation process, whatever you want to ask, and I'll answer those questions before moving on to the next video. So we have not a lot of time today, so most of it is going to be watching a video. So if you were expecting me to lecture for 45 minutes, I apologize. Lecturing is not really my style. I prefer to have the diverse and powerful and nuanced cast conversations speak for themselves. So I just want to get a quick sense real quick for those who are here and active. Can I get some Zoom reactions going? Can you thumbs up if you have heard of Lunar before? And can you shock react if you have not heard of Lunar? I see 1 thumbs up. Good. Okay, someone who's clearly heard of Lunar is shocked reacting, so I don't know why, but wow, we have a good mix. Wow, so many shocks for Lunar. Wow, I'm excited. That means y'all haven't seen the videos. What? So I'm so excited for you all to see the videos because it's literally like the power of having 23 Asian American Jews on the same screen is immense. Just seeing that kind of representation for the first time for me was huge. So I'm gonna just go into this piece a little bit about Shavuot, right? Because Shavuot is the moment that our people stood at Sinai and received the revelation of the Torah. So what does revelation mean to me as an Asian American Jew? It means finally being seen and being heard, But this past year has also revealed so much about what our society thinks and how it places Asian Americans. With the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a surge in anti-Asian hate attacks all across the country. In 2020, anti-Asian hate attack rates rose by over 150% in US major cities. What that has meant for my community is that this year, we have not felt safe. We are in a position of hypervisibility, in a position of being vulnerably attacked in major cities, in places that we call home, places that we call our communities. We are being scapegoated for the COVID-19 pandemic. And so Lunar has really arrived at a very unique moment where the politics of revelation is complicated, right? Asian Americans are topping news headlines for the first time. We're having, major success at the box office and movies and cinema. Chloe Zhao just won the Best Director award. Minari was like running viral. Everybody was watching and talking about and listening to Asian American directors and Asian American stories. But at the same time, why were we in the headlines? Because we were getting killed. So this means that Lunar really came at such a right time for our community of Asian American Jews, because after the Atlanta attacks, we were grieving. And for the first time ever, we had each other and we found each other. And that's been the power of this project, is just finding each other. My really good friend, colleague, and co-conspirator, Koena Kashira Halaf once said to me, on Shavuot, I truly believe that all of our people, past, present, and future, we gathered in affinity groups at Sinai. We were with our kin, our closest kin in our community. And so to me, finding Lunar is about finding that affinity. It's about finding people who understand how complicated it is to be seen as Asian Americans in this moment, and to navigate that and process that together. But Lunar also has meant a greater visibility for us, Asian American Jews, in the Jewish community. Tragically and ironically, because of the attacks, our videos were able to gain traction very quickly. For example, we gained over 600 followers on Instagram the day after Atlanta, most of whom are Jewish and white passing, whatever you want to call it. So in many ways, this moment is so complicated, and this holiday has come at a very complicated time, where the politics of revelation, identity, and visibility for Asian American Jews are more strife than ever. But we're gonna start on a good note. I'm gonna show episode 1, which is about food, and it's named The Taste of Connection. This is our inaugural episode, which aired during Lunar New Year this year, and it addresses how food is a way for our Asian American Jewish community to connect with their cultural identities, and how fusion food creates new possibilities for frontiers for cultural cohesion. So I'm going to share my screen and show you that video as soon as I get it queued up. This is going to be on YouTube, so please expect a little bit of a delay. However, still going to be good because we worked really hard. Oh, that's the audio. One sec. It has a very scandalous start, so please be prepared. All right. Can everyone see? Can you chat me if you can see? I'm gonna assume you can see. All right, I'm gonna play it.
If I can't see that it's pork or shrimp, I can pretend it's not there.
I grew up eating this food and you used to make fun of me, and now you're like waiting in lines.
I usually eat my latkes with garlic chili sauce. Some people might call it sacrilegious. I think it just adds the perfect amount of kick.
Both sides of my family, food is a very big deal. You move somewhere and they come in with like bags upon bags of food.
Both my grandmas on the Jewish side and the Thai side use food as a way to show their love. You just have to be constantly eating. There's always something on the table.
My father, my grandfather, and my uncle are kosher caterers. Food was ingrained in my blood.
One of the first things my mom did when she got married to my dad was she went to the bookstore and she bought a Jewish cookbook.
I just remember going to Japan every year, just being excited about what I'd eat for every meal.
Learning how to make babinka from my auntie Novelle.
Calling my dad on FaceTime and saying, okay, I don't know what you're in the middle of, but please put it aside. I need help to make some keema.
Waking up in Thailand and my Chinese Thai grandmother walking in wearing this neon jumpsuit, a sweatband around her permed hair, and she's got a bag of sticky rice and a bag of bing.
Sitting in the kitchen with my dad, and he would show that he would measure oil using half of the eggshell.
Eating my mom's home-cooked meals, or when I went to Israel and ate Israeli food.
When I bake challah on Fridays,
there's these moments that just help me feel like, oh, I do have stake in Filipino identity and I do have stake in Jewish identity because these foods have meaning to me, these foods have memories to me.
Growing up, we would eat Costa Rican food and Ashkenazi Jewish food, except for rice. Rice was always in a rice maker, white rice, not the toasted way.
One night I would have like, matzo ball soup or some other Jewish dish, and the other night an Indonesian beef soup or something like that.
Food kind of fills a void in my Asian cultural experience.
Moving to Arkansas, there's such a tiny Asian community here, and then a tinier Filipino community.
There wasn't like a Thai community center, there wasn't a Thai Buddhist temple. My aunt worked in Thai restaurants, so she brings food when she visited. It's strange that that's my most significant and like long-lasting connection to Thai culture. Because with Jewish culture, I've been much more enmeshed in Jewish communities.
My personal connection is definitely more Jewish food. I grew up with it, my family cooks it. Chinese food, which is amazing cuisine, I did not really grow up with it. If I go to a Chinese restaurant, people talk to me in Mandarin and I always feel so bad because I have no idea what they're saying. The way I look does not really line up with how I was raised.
When I feel that I need to prove my Jewishness, if I'm in like a really white Jewish space, something I can easily lean on and be like, this like bagel we're all eating at this potluck, I like this. I think that kind of comes from a sad place that I feel like I have to prove myself, but it has been a thing to be like, yes, I recognize this food. This is a clear indicator that I am Jewish enough. Also, I just love bagels.
My family really didn't keep Shabbat, didn't really eat challah together. Most of my experiences with Jewish food came at Jewish summer camp, talking to some of my friends. They would talk about foods that are part, I guess, the Ashkenazi Jewish cuisine, and I had never heard of those foods before. Not knowing those sometimes made me feel like I'm not Jewish enough, like I would feel shame because I also had this mixed identity.
At synagogue or a Jewish event, they have very European Ashkenazi Jewish food, and that doesn't always feel like home. When I've been able to find Indian restaurants that are kosher or these overlapping things that appeal to my identity, then I get really excited and I'm like, we all have to go there all the time.
When I started to keep kosher, that was like a huge conflict.
I would only eat with friends who only also kept full kosher, and we were always going to full kosher restaurants. It really helped me connect to the community, but I also feel like that disconnected me from my Asian culture because I wasn't able to eat any sort of like authentic Asian food.
There's so many trace proteins that are just so hugely part of Korean cuisine, but just really all Asian cuisine.
Tell me all you want how great that Asian certified kosher restaurant is. That's American Chinese food, friends.
I had a really hard time losing dishes that I totally grew up with and loved. Like some of my favorite foods were tray foods and I can no longer have them.
Today I wanted to make pad thai and I couldn't find kosher fish oil anywhere.
I've done my best to modify as much as I can, but certain things I'll just never get to eat again, which is super sad and felt like a huge loss of identity.
It was so hard to find food that wasn't kosher and Ashkenazi. My realm was so Ashkenazi. All I knew was like Ashkenazi food.
I do find that Buddhist temple cuisine matches up perfectly because it's basically all vegan, so it's an easy way to be able to eat Asian food and be keeping kosher.
In my household, we keep kosher and halal. How those two align actually end up being incredibly similar. They generally follow a lot of the same, we don't eat this and we eat this way.
There are. All right, we're gonna stop it right there. Let me pause. All right, one sec. I've returned. All right, so I'm ready to take some questions and comments or whatever you want to throw at me. So please put them in the chat and then I will answer for about 5 to 10 minutes and then we'll go into the second video viewing.
Hi, would it be okay if I just ask a question without the chat?
Of course, yeah.
I don't really type that well. I don't type that well. It'll take me hours. I was just thinking that it would be amazing if somebody started a business where the business was like Asian American food, and then going to different communities, like a Korean community, and where there's Jews in that community and Jews wherever different Asian Jews are, and having different restaurants that truly cater, really thought out. I thought that would be interesting.
I think so too. I think that speaks really well to what some people were saying in the videos about cultural fusion, right? And being able to achieve a sense of identity that, fuses parts of who you are together where you don't feel like they're separate or less than enough. And so, yeah. Okay, I'm seeing some questions that I am going to take. The first one is, how long does it take to make a video? I'm actually the producer, so I didn't actually edit the videos myself, but we had over 22 hours of footage that was cut down to about a 75-minute runtime across the series, which meant that each video probably took about 25 to 40 hours to edit across our 2 editors, because there was a lot of taking out ums and ands and likes and like snipping people together. And because of the sort of rapid pace and style of the videos, it took some time. Someone asked me, do you ever feel like you have to prove that you are Jewish enough? I do, all the time, for multiple reasons. Reason one being that I'm a patrilineal Jew. My dad is the Jewish one. Reason two is I didn't grow up in organized Jewish life at all. I grew up in China, and so I really didn't have access to Jewish culture or tradition or anything like that. I didn't even know what like Hanukkah was. Like, I was very outside of Jewish life. So I don't have that lifetime of Hebrew school and temple and, you know, summer camp and Nifty or whatever Jewish youth programs. So a lot of times I feel like people are, you know, talking about those things and they have a common reference point when they discuss that with each other in a common language. And I often feel outside of that. And then the third reason, obviously, is that I have this mixed Chinese identity, right? And sometimes people have some stereotypes about Chinese people that they tend to apply to me, which are uncomfortable and difficult to confront. And I will get questions because of the way I look, of like, did your mom convert? Like, how did you become Jewish? It's like a sense of question. And sometimes people don't even have to say anything problematic. Just the fact that I don't look like anyone else there and I don't have a similar cultural background to anyone else there will automatically make me feel like I have to prove myself even more. Were you able to interview people from a slightly older generation? Curious whether that might change different experiences. Yeah, so the videos themselves we were trying to cater to a millennial and Generation Z audience. And so our interview participants were mostly between the ages of 18 and 34. So that was kind of the intent of the piece, is to cater to a younger audience. But what's kind of interesting is that we've had older community members join us who found us on like social media or through friends who've been a part of our community, and they have shared perspectives that are kind of very different. Because a lot of us were on the younger side. In the past 2 or 3 years, there's been a lot more attention drawn to Jews of color in the Jewish community. But people who've been a part of the community for like decades, it's not always been like this, right? So a lot of our older members will kind of express, yeah, I feel like I was really virtually invisible until something like Lunar came along. And so there was a much longer journey with that. How did you reach out to connect and find 23 Asian Jews? Social media. So I actually have a very mixed race network because I was very involved with mixed race organizing in college. And so I actually knew a decent amount of Asian Jews. And, you know, at the same time, I posted in a lot of Jews of color and mixed race groups. We found a really wide variety of participants from a lot of different Asian American backgrounds, as you saw, and also with very different relationships to Judaism. Some were secular, some were observant, some converted to Orthodox Judaism. Others are kind of more along the spectrum in the middle somewhere. So yeah, social media had a very powerful impact in trying to find participants. Do Asian Jews seek solidarity with Black Jews? Great question. Thank you for bringing solidarity up. That is really important to myself. I can't speak for the whole Asian Jewish community or the Black Jewish community for that matter. I think solidarity, I think, is an individual journey of how you relate to your own identities and your activism thereafter. I think that absolutely Asian Americans and Black Americans have a responsibility of solidarity to each other, just from a personal point of view, and from a moral point of view of like people of color need to unite in order to fight white supremacy and systemic oppression. But from my personal standpoint, yeah, it's always been really important to me to stand in solidarity with my Black peers, just because I was organizing in a mixed race context where a lot of my peers were Black. And so I didn't have a strong understanding of their experiences going in. And I, subconsciously or consciously had perpetuated many harmful instances of anti-Blackness. And so for me, it's been a constant journey of learning and unlearning and trying to make sure that I have a solid understanding of the experiences of those who identify as Black. And so, yeah, I think Black and Asian solidarity is a long history there, since the 1960s during the civil rights movement with Yuri Kochiyama, Grace Lee Boggs, as well as Malcolm X and James Boggs, Grace Lee Boggs' husband. There's a long history of Asian American women activists being in solidarity with the struggle for Black liberation. And so to me also, there's a tradition that I need to carry on as an Asian American activist. Have you experienced discrimination from fellow Jews? I would prefer not to speak. I would prefer for you to listen to my cast members in Lunar about that, as I'm going to show a video that'll address that in a more communal kind of way. Every person has a different experience. For me personally, I have, and I'm going to leave it at that because I think it's going to be more powerful for folks to hear it from our collective community. All right, let me see. Any other questions? And I saw a few questions about kosher Asian restaurants. I am not qualified to answer those questions. I don't really know what the costs and benefits would involve or be, but I would certainly hope that as we're becoming a more diverse, multiracial community, that it becomes more accessible and widely available for there to be kosher Asian restaurants. So,
Sorry, let's see if I can do. I'm not getting feedback. I wanted to ask it without having to type it. I'm sorry. Have you found that most Asian Jews are of mixed race or of converted? Or
great question. Oh, did you have? Was there?
And I was at the one about the Black Jewish person at the previous session, and someone asked that question, and she gets offended when people think that she's mixed race because she converted. Even if they ask her if she's mixed race, she thinks that it's preconceived notions. But I'm like, many Asian Jews are mixed race, and I think it's just a perfectly, objective curiosity kind of question, not like preconceived notions or anything like that. So I was just wondering.
Totally. Thank you for your question. I think I'm not going to really speak on this too much because this is a specific experience to the Black community, and I don't identify as Black, in case that wasn't obvious, but there is a history of, colorism and discrimination based on mixedness and degrees of whiteness in the community. And when I've heard people, like, this is anecdotal, so I can't speak to this, but asking a Black person, are you mixed, can actually be quite colorist in terms of like, are you closer to whiteness than I thought? So it's not necessarily always about Jewishness in some ways. It's about the history of mixed identity in the Black community. So I don't want to speak too much to that because I don't am as Black, but that could be a layer of what that speaker was referring to. I would say that no, not all Asian American Jews are mixed race, but from what I could see and who I know, based on my own experience of meeting other Asian Jews, a lot of us are. I am mixed race. My father is white. My mom is Chinese, right? But I wouldn't say that conversion and being mixed race are necessarily mutually exclusive. A lot of mixed Asian Americans convert to Judaism as well, right? So I generally have seen sort of 3 different relationships to Judaism in the Asian American Jewish community that I know. Again, this is my personal experience. There is a wide range out there that I might not know. One is people like me who have one parent who identifies as Jewish and grew up Jewish and has Jewish lineage, and then one parent who is Asian American or Asian who may or may not have converted to Judaism, and they're mixed, or someone who's a transracial adoptee who may or may not choose to later convert to a different branch of Judaism than the one they were raised in. Some people do, some people don't. And then others who don't have a Jewish parentage relationship or a Jewish, familial relationship, but choose to convert to Judaism, and that they may or may not be mixed race. So I think that what that speaker was referring to is that there just should not be any assumptions made and should not be any questions asked of their identity in general, and that the Jewish community and as a whole can do a better job of, ensuring that people of color are not asked intrusive questions when they're trying to be in community. All right.
Interesting, because I think it affects your experience. I didn't think it was being overly personal. I just thought it was a good conversation starter, because I think it really does speak to your experience as a child versus, coming into Judaism as an adult, and it really can inform who you are, your identity, and a lot of things if you're mixed race versus just a convert as an adult. So I don't think there was any underlying agenda there.
Ellen, the issue is, though, that white people don't get asked how they're Jewish or how they don't have to qualify themselves in order to be accepted. They're just accepted. And then when they're ready to tell their story, they'll tell their story. And so putting people of color into the position of always having to explain themselves is saying, you're not really like us. We have, even though it comes from a place of curiosity, the impact on people who are different is saying, the collective impact can be you don't belong in the Jewish community unless you qualify yourself, explain yourself, and that's the discomfort.
Exactly. Thank you, Freddie. That was a beautiful explanation, and thank you for stepping in allyship and explaining that. That about captures it. It's exactly that. Would you ask a white person the same question? If you would not, then it's likely coming from a place of subconscious or conscious bias, right? So that's a microaggression, of course. And I have a colleague who converted to Judaism over 20 years ago and still gets asked all the time, what are you doing here? Are you here with your white husband? So it's not necessarily that, it comes from a place of curiosity, comes from a place of wanting to understand someone's story and build a relationship with that person. But a lot of times it can come off as exotifying or othering or perhaps harmful. So I don't personally really mind getting asked about my, story of how I came to Judaism, because I have a pretty atypical one. And so I think it's interesting. But of course, wanting to build a genuine relationship with the person before asking them personal questions about their identity is always good practice. And, people will share when they feel comfortable sharing, and people will come to the table with what they want to come to the table with once you build a relationship with that person. That's based on genuine human connection and not based on what you demand to know about why they're coming in, right? So I am not a diversity educator, so I don't tend to speak on these topics. And so I tend to just show the videos and then people learn from the videos. And so, all right. I'm going to show the second video, which is going to be more directly addressing experiences of racism and anti-Semitism that Asian American Jews have had in the Jewish community. And then we'll do some Q&A and close. And I need to queue up the second video. All right. And I am in this video. I usually am not in these videos because I'm camera shy, but I am in this one. So excited. All right.
With the recent surge in anti-Asian violence and anti-Semitic hatred, we felt it was important and necessary to make a video about our community members' experiences with these systems of oppression. The contents of this video may be difficult to watch, and the themes may be difficult to address and confront. Therefore, we encourage you to take care of yourselves as you watch this video and step away from it if necessary to protect your mental health and wellness. Trigger warnings include racism, anti-Semitism, and violence. For those viewers who do not experience these systems of oppression firsthand, we encourage you to use this as a learning experience to better your own understanding of anti-racism and anti-oppression work. Addressing these topics can be uncomfortable. However, being able to recognize that they exist and continuing to learn about them is the first step towards solidarity in our collective fight against white supremacy.
Seeing how much racism has come out.
We don't want to talk about race because we want to think we're beyond it, but we're not.
I have kind of stepped back from Judaism because I have felt so much racism.
Being someone who grew up in the Bay Area, there's always this idea that the Bay Area is so progressive.
Look at ethnic foods that we have, and there's women in hijabs. Race isn't like that big of a deal. Not really realizing all of the covert racism that was happening behind the scenes, the structural racism, the classism, and how that's all like so tied together.
All of the incidents that I've been seeing have been in those progressive cities.
Moving to Oregon, realizing there is a lot of overt racism still well alive in this country, some of which was from my own family, and all that covert racism that happened more in like liberal areas, that's actually still really present as well, but we couch it in these euphemisms. We don't want to talk about race because we want to think we're beyond it, but the reality of the situation is we're not. It's deeply ingrained. There's that like implicit bias that, again, I'm still trying to unlearn. I grew up very much feeling like the token. Like, here's this little brown girl who is so eloquent and articulate and raised up in a lot of educational settings.
There was a pressure to be a very good student from both of my parents. I would cry over a math problem because I thought I was gonna fail.
I think the model minority myth is definitely super harmful. A lot of people thought I was doing great, and I was not doing great. Everyone expected me to be good at math, and I was really bad at math.
This kid came up to me, he's like, I'll pay you $10 to do some kind of like math test. And I was like, why?
I'm terrible at math. He doesn't even know that I'm Filipino American. He's just like, oh, well, you must be some sort of Asian, and all Asians are good with math.
Where do you get that? I hate math. Math sucks.
I feel like I've actually gotten it more so on the Jewish side of things. My dad, every year, he looks through the list of Nobel laureates and makes note of which ones are Jewish. A lot of my Jewish development as an adult involved a lot of exploring the parts of Judaism that do not involve being an accomplished physicist.
Oh my god, my family is a giant stereotype. There's me in medicine, my brother's in banking, my other brother is in dentistry, my dad is in jewelry, my mom is in medicine, my stepdad is in medicine. We hit all of those stereotypes job-wise, and so instead of it being like, oh, you actually worked hard and tried to get into those jobs because those are your interests, it's like, oh, you got into those because they are the Jewish jobs.
I've definitely had people tokenize me and be like, oh, you got in because you were diverse, you were POC, that's why you got in.
Oh, you're Asian. Well, that makes sense why you're good at math.
It is a slap in the face because it's taking away from my hard work, my intelligence.
All of the nights that I would sit with a book and be like, oh my god, this is horrible.
I remember in middle school, we were playing musical chairs and we were in music class. These people were like, Amanda, why are you so aggressive? You're so aggressive. And I'm like, I'm playing musical chairs? You think I'm aggressive because you thought I was a docile Asian girl, the cute little Asian girl who's super smart and quiet and whatever.
People make this assumption and stereotype that you're submissive. I'm really not, and I'm really comfortable sharing my thoughts and opinions.
Stereotyping happened to Asian Americans to make us seem like we're successful in this really pressurizing, untrue way because of immigration laws, simply. It divides Asians too, to the image of what is Asian.
The stereotypes of the model minority are usually geared towards East Asians, and then South and Southeast Asians are generally absent from discussions.
My mom, as a Thai person, no one in her family went to college. No one in her family has a history of being any kind of model minority. I understand and I empathize, but not exactly in the same way that I myself experience.
It doesn't just hurt us as Asians or Jews, but it also hurts other minorities. We are put forward to the detriment of other groups.
It's a tool of white supremacy to see division between oppressed communities. It's dehumanizing and it breaks solidarity, and solidarity is the only way to truly defeat white supremacy.
Because Jews and Asian Americans are both stereotyped as model minorities, our two communities are uniquely positioned for solidarity in the fight against white supremacy. No matter how much our communities assimilate or achieve success, our belonging is conditional. Both as Jews and as Asian Americans, we've seen how when stereotypes go unchecked, they become precursors to hatred and violence.
Whenever something bad happens, you always need a scapegoat. Scapegoat is usually Jews, but since coronavirus came from China, it's going to be the Chinese people.
In Brooklyn's Sunset Park neighborhood, which is often referred to as Brooklyn's Chinatown, people were referring to the virus as the Wuhan virus and hurling xenophobic remarks at people of any Asian ethnicity. I was really afraid I was going to witness an attack.
Seeing how much racism has come out.
I hear Chinese slurs all the time.
And the I thing, the ching chong thing.
I always wear my mask outside, even if I'm by myself. If anyone is getting beat up in this neighborhood, it's me.
People just yelling random nonsense to you.
I have to tell people, yes, I speak English. I'm from here. I can understand you. But COVID didn't invent anti-Asian racism. It merely amplified the dehumanization and otherization that we have experienced for a long time. Questioning the loyalty of minority groups in the US is nothing new. We have witnessed this time and time again.
I am Afghani and Uzbekistani, and God forbid I'm ever at an airport.
Especially if I was traveling with my dad and his name is Zubair Ali, we would be searched and he would be taken by random searches all the time into back rooms.
I have gone to the underside of an airport. I have, since I was a child, been litmus tested, strip searched, patted down, screamed at, dog sniffed, the whole shebang.
Something that I also think about, which is more recent, my dad was downstairs with his girlfriend's daughter, who's also Indian. White neighbor comes out and she's like, "Can I help you?" He was like, "Excuse me, I've been connected to this apartment for 30 years. Who are you?" And she wrote to their landlord and said, "This man and Maya were trying to get into the apartment and Maya was super rude to me." And I was like, "Lady, this wasn't me." I said, "Excuse me, is there something we can talk about?" And I swear she muttered, "Bitch." My mom keeps asking me to go apologize and I say that this is not my place. place to try to fix her. Feelings like this where you are supposed to be the more understanding person and be like, let me teach them what racism is.
Having to fight and explain why what people are saying is wrong becomes such a draining effort.
Because of the recent increase in hate crimes against both our Asian American and Jewish communities, we are exhausted. When we get done explaining anti-Asian racism, we are then tasked with explaining anti-Semitism.
Judaism has so many conflicting stereotypes. We're really smart and like we're really good at things, and we're really rich and we control everything, but also we're really poor. How am I rich and poor at the same time?
People sometimes say things that are anti-Semitic.
Thinking that there's not a Jewish person in the room, like the Jews control Hollywood. I'm always like, so where's my job?
I had a Spanish class and I made up a story about this really greedy guy who was stealing from people, and the teacher was like, why was he stealing from people? And the guy was like, because he's a Jew. Every single person, including the teacher, was laughing at that. They just didn't think that there were any Jews in the class because it's not a Jewish area.
Recently, I was part of a dance community in Oakland. I think I was the only Jewish person in this class, and they were telling us to like hold our arm out, and then my teacher started calling it the Hitler move, and she would like laugh, and like I remember like feeling uncomfortable and just being like, I'll just get used to this. And then my friend that is Black one day was like, hey, that's actually not okay, because a lot of people were hurt by that person, and it may seem like it was a while ago, but it wasn't. I started tearing up. I don't think she actually knew at that point that I was Jewish, but she said it anyways, just for the sake of not being a bystander.
I have this one friend whose mom is from the Soviet Union. She internalized a lot of anti-Semitism. She is Ashkenazi, but she doesn't identify as like Jewish. And my friend has inherited a lot of those ideas, which I think is quite sad.
I have friends that are Jewish that will say anti-Semitic things about money, about ownership of the media. Like, well, this is something we do see. And I'm like, whoa, do you think that's fair for other Jewish communities around the world to say that they have ownership just because they're Jewish of the media and have riches that they don't know about?
People don't realize how ingrained this stuff is into our society. The whole like Jews control the media. Back in the day, they literally got forced out of New York City for owning their own movie companies. So where did they go? The West Coast, where there weren't laws against them.
If you wanted to take off for a holiday, you had to prove that that holiday actually existed, get like written consent from a rabbi. They would still dock points because you were missing class participation, which is not legal. We had to go to Title IX and go and fight that for an incredibly long time. And once my friend and I like graduated, it all came back. And I knew students who were thrown down the stairs for being Jewish.
I had a teacher, I couldn't have been more than 9. There was a portion of class that was dedicated to singing Christmas carols. And because I came from a household that was Jewish and Muslim, I did not know any of the words. My teacher's resolution to that was to send me outside when they did that every day. Sometimes I would go inside and she was halfway through the next lesson already. Nobody pushed back against it. It was completely accepted, and things like that are really, really indicative of the way that anti-Semitism and even anti-Asian racism through the model minority myth are kind of just accepted because these two groups are seen as like high performing. So any sort of discrimination that they receive, it's okay because they do really well in America. So there really shouldn't be any pushback or complaining.
In internet spaces right now, anti-Semitism is so casually there, and like so few people object to it. People make the defense, oh, it's a joke. But I mean, there have been studies, and you know, you can just use simple logic to infer that like if so many people joke about a thing, the eventual emergent perception of the thing is that joke.
When I was younger, I would laugh them off, and I also know now that laughing things off is also a way of coping with something that could be dangerous.
What's given me the most anxiety, especially as someone who lives a lot on social media, is the extremist thinking that people have of each other.
I feel like there's like this real erasure, this real like willingness to not understand nuance.
I always say that anti-Semitism is a sickness that is both on the extreme right wing of politics and on the extreme left wing of politics. It comes from different root thought processes and theories, but it looks very much the same.
A lot of people clock me as Israeli. I am not Israeli, but they think that I am, and so I get a lot of anti-Semitism or anti-Semitism hidden as anti-Zionism.
I've also had friends having to explain their relationship to Israel if they want to enter into queer communities, social justice communities. Just because I'm Jewish, why do I have to answer this question? I'm not over there. I don't have a vote in that government.
Now it's more important than ever that our two communities come together and support each other in combating hate. But in working towards solidarity between Jews and Asian Americans, we first need to do the deep internal work of acknowledging the harm perpetuated against Asian American members of the Jewish community. Whether it be sectarianism, Austrian normativity, or racism, the Jewish community has a long way to go in terms of having open dialogues and standing together against hate.
They say you're only Jewish if you were born of a Jewish mom or you converted in our community, which is like Orthodoxy. But what's funny is that how do you know that your mom's all the way back to when the Jews took the Torah at Mount Sinai? How do you know that they're all Jewish? You don't know.
This exclusionary way of thinking that like you have to be a pure breed, you have to be Jewish from your mom's side and your dad's side, but like especially your mom's side.
Arguably our biggest problem in the community is the sectarianism between Jews of different backgrounds, of different denominations, of different ethnic backgrounds. It drives me crazy when people talk about whether or not you like look Jewish. If you line up, an Ethiopian Jew, a Polish Jew, a Kaifeng Jew, an Indian Jew, you cannot tell me that these people all look alike. It happens in such subtle ways and may even seem playful because we're talking about things like food and how we look. The more we do that, the more that we're dividing our own community. And I think it's incredibly destructive and actually ends up leaving us really vulnerable from those external attacks of anti-Semitism as well. We really have to unite to be able to have that, strong wall against all these external forces, which unfortunately are getting just graver, every single day.
For Mizrahi Jews, people think that we need to be fixed, like our version of Judaism is wrong.
Having the Muslim background as well, there is the suspicion that creeps around if people do know that I'm from an interfaith family, that there's no way that I could potentially have any like loyalty to the Jewish faith.
I have felt so much racism in the Jewish community. I cannot even begin.
I've constantly felt I've had to prove that I'm Jewish since my earliest memories, basically.
They'll ask you questions to see how Jewish you are. When did you have your bat mitzvah? Did you go to Jewish school?
The most common one, and it almost always comes from old Jewish men, is the question like, why are you here?
Did you come to the right place? Are you sure that this was the meeting you were supposed to come to?
Oh, are you here because you're like trying to like observe the Jewish people?
People would ask me if I was there for the free Shabbat meal, why I wore a Star of David necklace, because that's for Jewish people,
That really visceral kind of ostracization has really made me feel like I can't take up any space, and I often feel really silenced.
I've started to just respond with my own humor, and I'm just like, I'm here for Shabbat, like, why are you here?
I have kind of stepped back from Judaism because I have felt so much racism in shul, in regular conversations. I sometimes feel so tokenized and so fetishized that I just can't be in those spaces.
When I feel racism from the Jewish community, I'm like, what are we doing?
For a community that's been so persecuted our entire existence.
Why wouldn't you extend empathy and understanding and welcoming? If the whole point is like preservation and keeping Judaism alive, why wouldn't you like open your doors to anyone who's interested?
It has been really hard for me to separate the racism that I have felt with like the beauty of Judaism because I have felt it so much.
Race is such a complicated topic, but ultimately what's happening is there is this consistent deep hurt on the basis of people's assumptions when they look at you. I would really love if we could just get over that as a society, and I think to do so we need to acknowledge that it's deeply present. Like there's so much that even really good people need to work on so that we can contribute to a society that is actually really equitable and that really does value like the humanity of each person.
All right, I have 10 minutes left in this section. So, questions again. Any questions? What Asian Jewish community leaders, rabbis, educators think about all this? Could you clarify what do you mean by all this? Okay, about the racism in the Jewish community that the Asian Jews in the film face. Again, we're all individual humans, so we all have our own points of view, and I can only speak for myself, but I'm going to link an article that I was in, one sec, which is an article that I think 9 of us responded, maybe not 9, maybe 5 of us responded to in Jewish Telegraphic Agency right after the Atlanta shootings, where we talked about our personal reactions and thoughts and what we think the Jewish community can do better moving forward. So you can go ahead and peruse that article for the perspectives from major leaders who are Asian American in the Jewish community. I'm not saying I'm a major leader, but everyone else on that list is. So, all right. Any other questions? If no questions, any comments, thoughts, reactions? Gonna make y'all do another Zoom virtual reaction game again. If I don't receive any commentary.
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me? Thanks. I really thought the video was great. I loved it, I have a question, like, I think somebody put it in the chat, like older Asian Jewish people, maybe Asian American or Asian Jewish, Asian American Jewish or Asian Jewish, older people. I'm just wanting to know a little bit about like the experiences of older Asian Jewish people.
Yeah, and I can point you to a video by our graphic artist, Davi Chang, who is an elder who talks a little bit about her experience. She embraced the covenant a few decades ago when she married her spouse, who is Jewish. So I am going to find this video of Davi, which was made by Vahola Shon, actually, who's sponsoring the programming today. And I'm going to send that in the chat so you can listen to that video later, which is Davi's experience. Davi is an elder, so that'll be a little bit different from mine.
Okay, appreciate it.
Of course. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a comment to make.
Yeah, of course. Go for it, Judith.
I'm a rabbi, and it just breaks my heart. I feel like crying now to see the pain and suffering that Jews of color have experienced in it's just horrifying to me. I'm very grateful to the fact that I'm not a congregational rabbi at this point. I had been, but for many years I've just been teaching and I've been a chaplain. And every person that chooses to become Jewish, and for people who are mixed race, or different race, who have one Jewish parent, and that it's shocking to me to see the anti-Asian, the anti-Semitism, the attitude of the Jewish community that is being expressed to non-white Jews. And I want to express an apology for those people who have been that way. And I regret to say that, or not that I regret to say, but I hope that it's less so in the liberal community than in the more traditional community. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry that so many people who are committed to a Jewish life have had to experience such antipathy and alienation.
Thank you so much, Judith, for your powerful and very deeply emotional comment. I so appreciate hearing that you've reflected on the ways in which Jews of color are marginalized. That's actually a good segue into this question. So I usually don't answer questions about, oh, this is a different question than I thought it was. Sorry, I was wrong. Any thoughts or advice on how to feel less discouraged after experiencing years of racism within the Jewish community? Find your people. That is my biggest advice, is find your people. I would not be here today presenting to you at a legacy Jewish institution as a proud Jew if I didn't have other Jews of color right by my side. So I would say that the most important thing for us is to find each other. And when you're in a room full of everyone like you, who looks like you have similar experiences as you, who can relate to you and who feel the sense of kindred spirit, and you hear them saying those Shabbat prayers, oh my God. If you are a white ally, help your Jews of color in your congregation, your community, your friends, your loved ones, find our people, help us find each other. That is often the most powerful way to be in community and for us to continue to lead in this community. All right. Any other questions? Okay, if you are interested in my personal story, I can also link some of my writings in the chat, so you can take a look at that since this program is about to conclude and I have some business announcements to make. I am going to find an article that I wrote a couple of years ago about my own journey so that you can read that later, so that you can learn more about my own personal story if you're interested. This is an article that I wrote a few years ago about how I grew up completely away from Judaism, but ended up finding it really powerful to reclaim my Jewish identity. And so now I have a few closing announcements about Lunar and how you can stay engaged and continue to learn from us or get involved. If you are an Asian American Jew, I want to hear from you because I love finding other Asian Jews. So however old you are, wherever you're from, whatever your relationship to Judaism and your Asian American identity is, please get in contact with us. You can either find us on Instagram at @asian.jews, or you can email us at lunarfilmproject@gmail.com. Putting that on the chat. Yes, people who are in the process of conversion, Jews in progress, Jews who are Jewish, Jews who are working on the Judaism is welcome to reach out to me and us at Lunar. We're very welcoming. We have a great WhatsApp group chat. So if you're an Asian Jew, please come find us, please, because I would love to connect. And if you are an ally trying to learn more about Asian American Jewish experiences, I recommend keeping up with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Our Instagram is @asian.jews. And yes, it should be Lunar Film, not Luar Film, sorry. And then our YouTube, I'm linking that in the chat right now. Then also our Facebook. A race against time over here, trying to get all this before the program ends. And our website, which is hosted on Beholashon. And of course, I cannot end the session without thanking Beholashon, who is the sponsor of this track that's presented to you today, Jewish Diversity, and who is also the fiscal sponsor of Lunar and brought me in to present to you all. So big thank you to Beholashon for trailblazing and doing this work for 2 decades. And if you want to donate to support the work of Lunar or Beholashon, you can go to that link right there that I just linked, globaljews.org/videos/Lunar. So, all right, for me, it's 7:22. For y'all, it's 10:22. How are we feeling? I'm gonna do one more Zoom reaction thing and then close this out. If you are tired, please use this reaction. If you are energized, please use this reaction. And if you are feeling a lot of love after Lunar, please use this reaction. Woo! Energized! Feeling a lot of love. Look at that. Oh, yes, I love seeing these Zoom reactions. Yay! Also, shout out to all my fellow Asian American Jews. We are powerful together. So let's go. Reach out to me. Join your group chat. All right. Cool. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you all today for being such an engaging audience.
Yes, Jen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Bye.